My name is Marcus Calloway. I am 42 years old, and until 3 months ago, I genuinely believed I had built something worth being proud of. I want you to stay with me here, because what I'm about to tell you, it shook me to my core. And if you've ever trusted someone completely, only to find out that trust was a beautifully constructed lie, then you already know a piece of what I felt. But before I get into it, please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. Because I didn't just go through this for nothing. I went through it so that someone, somewhere, would know they're not alone. Now, let me take you back. For 17 years, I had been the chief electrician at Galveston Industrial, a steady, reliable job with good pay and solid benefits. The kind of work that lets a man sleep at night, knowing he provided for his family. I wasn't flashy. I wasn't wealthy. But I was honest, and I was present, and I thought that counted for everything. I married Diana when I was 27, and she was 22. Lord, she was something else back then. Sharp-minded, beautiful, the kind of woman who walked into a room and changed the temperature. We had our son, Caleb, 9 years ago, and I remember the night he was born, standing in that hospital corridor with tears I couldn't explain running down my face, thinking, this is it. This is the whole point of everything. I was wrong. The day it all collapsed started like any other Tuesday. We'd finished a massive rewiring project ahead of schedule, and my supervisor let us go early. I was already planning to surprise Caleb, maybe take him for ice cream, watch his face light up the way only a 9-year-old's face can. That kind of simple joy. That was my whole world. I pulled onto our street in North Philadelphia just after 4 in the afternoon, and that's when I saw it. A black Cadillac Escalade sat right in front of our gate like it owned the property. $100,000 vehicle, tinted windows, idling with the confidence of someone who has never been told no. My stomach dropped before I even stepped out of my car. Something was wrong. Every nerve in my body knew it. I parked on the street and walked toward the gate. Before I got halfway there, 2 men stepped out of the Cadillac. Big men, suit and shoulders men, the kind of men whose job it is to make other men feel small. They positioned themselves directly between me and my own front door. "Can I help you?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Then the driver's door opened, and Diana stepped out. My wife of 15 years, standing there in front of our home, looking at me without a trace of guilt, without a flicker of shame. Just calm. The kind of calm that only comes from having planned something for a very long time. Then he appeared from the passenger side. Tall, silver-haired, early 50s, wearing a suit that announced money before he ever opened his mouth. His name was Vincent Rossi, a real estate developer with connections threaded through this city like roots under concrete. I'd heard the name before. Never imagined I'd see him standing in my driveway with his hand on my wife's back. That hand, that deliberate, possessive hand on the small of her back. "Marcus," Diana said, her voice smooth as glass. "We need to talk." Vincent stepped forward, a smile curling at the edge of his mouth like he'd already won. "Your wife has made her choice," he said, his accent slight but unmistakable. "I'm here to make sure the transition is civil." I looked at Diana. I searched her face for the woman I had married, the woman who had cried at Caleb's school play last spring, the woman who made terrible pancakes every Sunday morning and laughed about it. She wasn't there. "Diana, what is this?" "Exactly what it looks like," she said, crossing her arms. "I'm leaving. I deserve more than this. More than you." And then one of the men, the one with a scar above his eyebrow, stepped forward. His voice was gravel and ice. "Mr. Rossi wants to make something clear. She's with us now. We're here to break a few of your ribs if you try anything stupid. Just a little preventive measure." The second man grinned, flexing his fingers like he was warming up for something he'd done before. "Ha. You know what's funny?" In that moment, a strange calm washed over me. Because I had been in the Army before I ever picked up a wire or a circuit board. And the Army teaches you one thing above everything else. Rage is only useful if you own it. I let a slow, cold smile spread across my face. "Let me get this straight," I said, looking directly at Vincent Rossi. My wife decided to betray 15 years of marriage. That's her choice. But you brought two hired hands to threaten me on my own property. That's your mistake. Vincent's smile faltered. Just a fraction. Insurance, Callaway. Nothing personal. Everything is personal, I said. Then I looked at the two men. You boys really want to do this? They didn't answer with words. The scarred one rushed me first, throwing a wide right hook. I ducked under it clean. 17 years of physical work had kept me sharper than he expected. I drove my elbow up into his solar plexus, and he, folded like wet paper, gasping and clutching himself on the ground. The second one came at me from the side. I pivoted, caught his wrist mid-swing, twisted until something popped, and used his own momentum to send him crashing into the hood of the Cadillac with a sound. Like a thunderclap, he slid down to the asphalt, dazed, staring up at the sky. 10 seconds, maybe less. Vincent backed toward the car, his face the color of old ash. Look, there's been a misunderstanding. No, a misunderstanding. I walked toward him slowly. You came to my house. You threatened me. Bad decision. Diana finally showed emotion. Panic cracked through her composure like a fault line. Marcus, stop. Please, just let us leave. I looked at her. Really looked at her. Where is Caleb? Her eyes slid away. He's with my sister. He's fine. You took my son without telling me. The words came out quiet. Dangerous. He needed stability. She shot back, finding something like spine again. Not this. They loaded into the Cadillac quickly, the two men limping and wincing as they climbed in. As they pulled away, Diana didn't look back. Not once. I stood in my own driveway and watched 15 years evaporate like morning fog. I went inside. The house felt wrong the moment I crossed the threshold. Half the closet was empty. Her laptop was gone from the desk. Photographs of us had been removed from the walls, leaving pale, rectangular ghosts on the paint. She had been doing this gradually, carefully, so I wouldn't notice. A few things at a time. Over weeks, maybe months. She had been disappearing from this home long before she left it. I called my sister, Renee. I need you to come stay with me for a few days. Marcus, what's wrong? Everything, I said. I'll explain when you get here. The next morning, I went to work. What else was I supposed to do? Galveston Industrial had been my second home for 17 years. I knew every wire, every circuit, every corner of that facility. My supervisor, Tom Briggs, called me into his office before lunch. He would meet my eyes. Marcus, we need to talk. What's going on, Tom? He shifted, looked at the wall, looked at his hands. Corporate received a call yesterday. From Vincent. Rossi's office. My stomach sank like a stone in deep water. Rossi's a major investor. He sits on the board. He's requested certain changes. You're firing me. It wasn't a question. Tom looked miserable. I fought it, Marcus. You know I did. But it came from the top. I'm sorry. 17 years, Tom. I know. It's not right. I cleaned out my locker in silence. The guys on the floor knew something was wrong. A few tried to ask questions. I shook my head. What could I tell them? That my wife's new man had just ended my career. With a single phone call? When I got home, there was an envelope in the mailbox. Legal documents. Diana had filed for divorce. 3 days ago, 3 days before she'd even shown up at the gate. She had choreographed every single step, but buried in the paperwork was the real gut punch. A restraining order, false claims of verbal abuse and threatening behavior, and emergency temporary custody of Caleb. I was not allowed to contact my own son without her permission. I sat at my kitchen table with those papers in my hands, and I want you to understand what that feels like. In 24 hours, I had lost my wife, my job, and my son, and I was sitting alone in a house full of rectangular shadows where photographs used to be. My phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Callaway, this is Detective Sandra Moss with Philadelphia PD. I need to ask you some questions. Mr. Rossi has filed an assault complaint. 2 of his security staff are in the hospital. I laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. They came to my house and threatened to break my ribs. That's not what the report says. Do I need a lawyer? A pause. That's your right. I hung up, and called the one person I could trust. My friend since high school, Daniel Reeves, who had become one of the sharpest defense attorneys in the city. We'd grown up together on the same rough streets in South Philly. He'd gone to law school. I'd gone to the Army, then to electrical work. But we had never stopped being brothers. Daniel, I said when he answered, I need help. But that was just the beginning. Because what was coming next, what the private investigator would find, what the FBI would tell me, that's the part that changed everything I thought I knew about my own life. Stay with me, because this story is about to go much, much deeper. If you're feeling this story right now, drop a comment below and tell me where you're from. And if you've ever had the ground pulled out from under you by someone you trusted completely, you already know this feeling. Keep watching, and I'll tell you this. By the time the week was over, I would learn that my wife had been cheating for 8 years, that she had stolen $40,000 from our joint account, that she owned a secret apartment in the city, and that she had a daughter, a 14-year-old girl, that she had never once told me existed. But the worst part, the part that nearly broke me completely, the FBI was about to tell me that I was never supposed to be a husband. I was supposed to be a target. Don't go anywhere. I hired a private investigator named Curtis Webb the day after I was fired. Curtis was ex-law enforcement, late 50s, the kind of man who looked like he'd seen every dark corner of human nature and had simply stopped being surprised by any of it. He had a reputation for finding things that people buried deep. I sat across from him in his office, and I said 4 words. Tell me the truth. He called me 3 days later. You're going to want to sit down for this. We met at a diner. He slid a manila folder across the table. I opened it with hands that had started shaking before I even saw the first page, and I want you to understand, I am not a man who shakes easily. Your wife has been unfaithful for at least 8 years, Curtis said quietly. Vincent Rossi is just the most recent. Before him, there was a corporate attorney named David Whitmore. Before that, a physician, a contractor, a personal trainer. I found evidence of at least 7 different men, going back to when Caleb was 1 year old. 1 year old. My son had been 1 year old. I can't even explain what that does to a person. To realize that while you were up at 3 in the morning warming bottles and learning how to be a father, the woman you loved was building an entirely separate life. There's more, Curtis continued. He pointed to bank statements. Small transfers, a few $100s here and there, spread over 8 years. Added together, just over $40,000, drained from our joint account into a private account I never knew existed. She had been stealing from me. Slowly, patiently, the way you'd bleed a person out without them ever noticing. And this. He slid a property record across the table. A condominium in Center City, purchased 3 years ago under a shell company. Traced back through layers of paperwork to Diana. She had a secret apartment, a second home, a second life. I sat there in that diner booth staring at the folder, and I felt something strange. Not just grief, not just rage, something colder and quieter than either of those. The feeling of a man realizing that the ground under his feet has been hollow for a very long time. One more thing, Curtis said. He set down a single photograph. A young girl, maybe 13 or 14, photographed leaving a school in Wilmington, Delaware. Your wife had another child, a daughter. She gave her up for adoption 14 years ago, right before she met you. The room tilted. What? The girl's name is Ellie Lawson. She's 14. She lives with foster parents in Wilmington. The adoption agency contacted me because Ellie has been asking about her birth mother. I cannot breathe. I sat there in that diner, and I genuinely could not pull air into my lungs for what felt like a full minute. Diana had a daughter who had been asking about her, a daughter she had hidden like a secret so shameful it couldn't be spoken aloud. And she had married me, built a home with me, without ever saying a single word. Does Diana know the girl is looking for her? I managed. Unknown. But Ryan, Marcus, this girl could matter in court. She is in a very real sense a witness to who your wife truly is. Are you still with me? Because I need you to be. This story is just reaching the surface of what was actually buried underneath. Hit that like button and keep going with me. Daniel wasn't sure when I told him about Ellie. Putting a 14-year-old girl on the stand is risky, he said. The judge might see it as you manipulating a child. She volunteered, I said. And Daniel, she's a victim too. Diana used her own daughter as an alibi for her affairs. She told people she was visiting her sick child in Delaware when she was really meeting other men. Ellie was a cover story before Ellie even knew her mother existed. Daniel went quiet for a long moment. You're right, he finally said. But we have to be careful how we present this. I drove to Wilmington the next day. The Lawsons lived in a modest house on a quiet street, the kind of neighborhood where people still wave from porches. Patricia Lawson, Ellie's foster mother, met me at the door with cautious kindness. Ellie was in the living room. She had Diana's bone structure, Diana's eyes. But there was a weariness in this girl that no 14-year-old should carry. You're married to my birth mother, she said when I sat across from her. Not a question, a statement, delivered with the precision of someone who had rehearsed it. I am, I said. Or I was. She cheated on you. Again, not a question. How did you know that? I researched her. Found things online. She's with some rich guy now, right? Yes. A man named Vincent Rossi. Ellie looked down at her hands. Long pause. I want to meet her. I wanted to understand why she gave me up. Another pause. But now I don't know. What made you want to meet me? I asked gently. She looked up. Her eyes were steady and heartbreaking all at once. Because I wanted to know if everyone in my biological family was like her. Selfish. A liar. I'm not, I said. And then I told her the truth about how her name had been used. How Diana had told friends and acquaintances she was visiting her daughter in Delaware when she was meeting other men. How Ellie, a child she had abandoned, had been weaponized as a cover story. I watched Ellie's hands tremble as the picture assembled itself in her mind. She used me as an excuse to cheat on you. Yes. Before I even knew she existed. Yes. Patricia Lawson put a protective hand on Ellie's shoulder. Mr. Calloway, this is a great deal for a child to process. I know. I'm sorry. But she deserved the truth. Ellie stood up and walked to the window. When she turned back, there was something new in her expression. Still, quiet, and absolute. You have a son? Caleb. He's 9, right? He is. Does he know about me? No. Diana never told either of us. Ellie straightened. I want to testify in court. I want to tell the judge who she really is. Patricia looked alarmed. Ellie, sweetheart, that's a very big. She threw me away. Ellie said, her voice unwavering. And then she used me to cover up her lies. If I can help keep Caleb away from her, I will. I had to turn away for a moment, because I was not going to cry in front of a 14-year-old girl who was holding herself together better than most adults I knew. 2 weeks after that meeting, Caleb found a way to call me from a phone his aunt had left lying around. Dad. His voice was small and scared, the voice he used when he'd had a nightmare and would come padding down the hall to find me. Caleb, buddy, are you okay? I miss you, Dad. Mom's boyfriend is weird. He keeps trying to act like he's my dad. It feels wrong. I'm working on getting you back. I promise. Dad, there's something else. I heard Mom on the phone. She said something about getting your passport revoked, about you not being allowed to leave the state. Ice filled my veins. When did you hear this? Yesterday. I called Daniel the moment Caleb hung up. They're moving to revoke my passport. They want to use my immigration background. I came from Poland when I was 12, naturalized at 18. I know, Daniel said grimly. And it doesn't matter that it was all legitimate 24 years ago. If they can create doubt, they can drag you into immigration court for years. And if you're fighting deportation, you can't fight for Caleb. They weren't just trying to take my son. They were trying to erase me from this country entirely. But that night, Curtis called me with something that changed the entire shape of this story. Marcus, I found out how Diana met Vincent Rossi. It wasn't random. He told me that 3 years ago, I had worked on a major security system installation at Galveston, Industrial's new research and development facility, a facility working on classified military contracts. And Vincent Rossi had been trying, through various channels, to access that facility's patents and technology for 2 years. So he went through Diana, I said. Yes. She approached him at a charity event 3 years ago. I found the photographs. What, Marcus? I think it goes back further than 3 years. I think Diana was placed in your life 15 years ago, specifically to get close to you. The room didn't tilt this time. It spun. The timing, Curtis continued. You met her right after you got the position at Galveston. She pursued you aggressively, married you quickly, and for 15 years, she has been the perfect position to access your work files, your security clearances, your institutional knowledge. I sat with that for a long time. You're saying my entire marriage was an intelligence operation. I'm saying it's possible. And if it's true, Vincent Rossi isn't just a man who took your wife. He's been running an espionage ring with her as the operative. Everything I thought I had been, a husband, a father, a provider, had been a role in someone else's play. I had not been loved. I had been deployed. How far can a betrayal go before it stops being personal and becomes something else entirely? Something criminal? Something that involves the FBI? You're about to find out. 2 days before the custody hearing, Vincent Rossi called me himself. Against every instinct I had, I answered. Calloway. His voice was smooth, controlled. The voice of a man who has never once doubted that he would get what he wanted. I'd like to meet. Just us. No lawyers. I think civilized men can resolve this. Quietly. We met at a restaurant in Center City where the lunch menu cost more than my weekly groceries. He was already in a private booth at the back, standing as I approached, extending his hand with a smile. I did not take it. Suit yourself, he said, sitting. Can I order you something? The lobster here is remarkable. Say what you came to say. Vincent reached into his jacket and produced an envelope. He slid it across the white tablecloth. I opened it. A cashier's check. $5 million. Sign over full custody of Caleb to Diana, he said pleasantly. Agree to supervised visitation once a month. Disappear quietly. And that check is yours. I stared at the number for a moment. $5 million. Enough to start over anywhere. Enough to never worry again. All I had to do was walk away from my son. You're trying to buy my child, I said. I'm offering you a way out of a fight you cannot win, Vincent corrected. He leaned forward. Let's be honest, Marcus. You've lost your job. You're facing assault charges. Immigration is looking at your paperwork. Even if you fight this in court, you'll spend years in legal battles and probably still lose. What? Can you give Caleb? Instability? A father consumed by litigation? Take the money. Start over. Fine. Someone new. I picked up the envelope. Vincent's smile widened. I tore the check in half. Then in half again. And again. And I dropped the pieces on the table between us. Here's my counter-offer, I said, standing. Go to hell. Vincent's smile disappeared so fast it was like a mask falling off. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was not seeing what Diana really was 15 years ago. But I'm done making mistakes. You want to fight? You've got one. And when the truth comes out about what you and Diana have been doing, everything you've built is going to come down around your ears. I walked out without looking back. Daniel was waiting in his car outside. Ha. He took one look at my face and said, how bad? He offered me $5 million to walk away from Caleb. Daniel stared. What did you say? I tore the check up. He started laughing. A real, genuine, full-bellied laugh. That's my friend. Okay. Now, they know you can't be bought, which means they're going to come at you harder. Let them, I said. I'm ready. But I was not ready for what came next. That night, Daniel called me from outside his house. His voice was shaking. Marcus, you need to come. Now, when I arrived, there were police cars outside. Daniel stood on his front lawn with his arm around his wife, Grace. Their teenage kids huddled nearby, pale and frightened. What happened? Someone tried to grab Grace, Daniel said. His voice was so tight it sounded like wire. She was getting groceries from the car. A van pulled up. 2 men got out. They tried to force her inside. He stopped, steadied himself. A neighbor came out. They ran. But Marcus, they told her, they said, tell your husband to back off, or next time we won't leave. I felt sick all the way through. They had gone after Daniel's family because he wouldn't drop my case. FBI Special Agent Patricia Collins arrived within the hour. She was sharp-eyed, careful, as she listened to everything without expression, and she pulled Daniel and me aside. This is escalating faster than expected. Mr. Reeves, I can offer your family protective custody. Witness, protection if necessary. Daniel looked at Grace. I watched the war move through him. His family on one side, his principals on the other. Daniel, I said quietly, if you need to walk away from this case, I understand. Your family comes first. Always. Grace walked over and took his hand. She looked at him the way people look at each other when they've already decided and just need to say it out loud. We're not letting them win, she said. Our kids need to see that. Daniel's eyes filled. We'll take the protection, he told Agent Collins. But I'm staying on the case. Good, Collins said. Because the attempted kidnapping gives us probable cause to investigate Rossi. Directly, we're pulling his communications, his financial records. All of it. Weeks of investigation followed. And what the FBI found in Vincent Rossi's private communications was the thing that unraveled everything. Emails between Rossi and Diana going back 12 years. Before I had ever met her. Discussing what they call the target. Discussing access to Galveston's classified research contracts. Payments to Diana for information. Instructions. Updates. Celeste, Diana, had not fallen in love with me at a chance encounter. She had been assigned to me. The courtship, the wedding, the 15 years of marriage, all of it had been a long-running corporate espionage operation, and I had been the mark. But Rossi made one critical mistake. He had kept records of everything, including payments to Judge Harold Greer, the judge assigned to our custody case. $20,000 every quarter. Golf vacations. A car registered to Greer's wife. All documented. All traceable. Agent Collins called us in. We have him. Greer is dirty, and we can prove it. He'll be arrested tomorrow. Your custody case will be transferred to a federal judge. What about Diana? I asked. She's looking at serious time. Conspiracy, industrial espionage, wire fraud. If she cooperates, maybe 10 years. If she doesn't, Collins let that hang in the air. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I put it on speaker. Vincent Rossi's voice filled the room. Tight. Furious. A man who had never lost anything in his life and could feel the ground crumbling under his feet. Calloway, you've made a terrible mistake. No, I said. You made the mistake. When you thought money could buy everything. Your immigration case is being expedited. You'll be on a plane to Poland within the week. Actually, Agent Collins said calmly, Mr. Calloway is a protected federal witness. Any attempt to deport him will be blocked by this office. And Mr. Rossi, this call is being recorded. I'm Special Agent Patricia Collins with the FBI. You're under investigation for corruption, conspiracy, and witness intimidation. I strongly suggest you contact your attorney. The line went dead. The room was completely silent. Then Daniel looked at me. Did we just win? We're getting close, Collins said. But cornered animals are dangerous. Everyone stays alert. That night, Caleb called me from Renee's house. Dad, when can I come home? Soon, buddy, I said, and my throat was so tight I could barely get the words out. I promise. Very soon. Stay with me. Because before the courtroom, before the verdict, there was one more conversation I needed to have. Why I never expected. And it started with 2 words from the woman who had destroyed my life. I'm sorry. The day before the rescheduled custody hearing, Diana asked to meet me. Just the 2 of us. No. Lawyers. Every instinct I had told me not to go. I went anyway. She was waiting at a coffee shop near the courthouse. Neutral ground, public tables, the smell of espresso and normalcy everywhere around us. And Diana, the woman I had shared a bed with for 15 years, the woman who had held our son when he was born, the woman who had kissed me goodbye every morning for a decade and a half, looked like a ghost of herself. She had aged years and weeks. The armor of designer clothes and Vincent's money was gone. She sat, with her hands wrapped around a coffee cup she hadn't touched. Thank you for coming, she said. What do you want, Diana? She stared at the table for a long time. 12 years ago, she finally said, I was recruited by a firm that handles corporate intelligence. They identified you as someone with access to valuable proprietary research at Galveston. I was hired to get close to you, to marry you if I could, to gather information over the long term. The confirmation of what I already suspected landed differently than I expected. Not like an explosion, more like the last piece of something enormous clicking into place. Our entire marriage was an assignment, I said. At first, she said, and then she looked up at me, and her eyes were full of something I had not seen from her in a long time. Something real. But it didn't stay that way. When Caleb was born, when I held him for the first time, something changed in me. I love that boy. Whatever else I've done, that part is real. Just not enough to stop lying. She looked down. I got in too deep. Vincent found out about my past. About Ellie. He blackmailed me. Said he'd expose everything if I didn't continue helping him. I told myself I was protecting Caleb. You were protecting yourself. She didn't argue. Tears ran down her face, and she didn't wipe them away. There's something else, she said. 10 years ago, when you were on that business trip to Houston, my blood went cold. You were unfaithful to me, she said quietly. One night, I hired someone to look into it after I suspected something I've known for a decade. The confession landed on me like a physical weight. One night, 10 years ago, a moment of weakness I had buried so deep I had nearly convinced myself it never happened. A woman whose face I could barely remember. Drinks at a conference. Self-disgust I had carried like a stone ever since. So we're both liars, I said. No. She shook her head. You made one terrible mistake in a moment of weakness. I built our entire relationship on deception from the first day. There is no comparison. Why are you telling me this now? Because Vincent knows. He found out somehow. He's going to bring it up in court tomorrow to paint you as a hypocrite. I wanted you to hear it from me first. The silence between us stretched. Does Caleb know? I asked. No. Good. I stood slowly. Whatever happens tomorrow, I'll make sure he knows at least one of his parents. Try to tell the truth. Ryan, Marcus. She reached across the table. I didn't take her hand. The FBI offered me a deal. If I testify against Vincent, they reduce my sentence. I'm taking it. Good. I'll lose years with Caleb. He'll grow up while she stopped. Breathed. I loved you, she said. At some point, it became real. I need you to know that. I don't know what to do with that. Even now, I don't know if I believe it. I don't know if it matters. What I know is that I walked out of that coffee shop, called Daniel, and told him about Houston. How bad is it? He asked. Bad enough that I'm ashamed of it. One night, 10 years ago, he was quiet for a moment. Ryan, everyone makes mistakes. What matters is what you did after. You didn't make it a pattern. You didn't build your life on it. Will the judge see it that way? I don't know, but we're about to find out. The courtroom was packed. Judge Elizabeth Farrow had been assigned to replace the now-arrested Greer. She was sharp, unhurried, and the kind of judge who looked at a person and seemed to be reading something the rest of us couldn't see. Vincent sat in the back row, his empire fracturing around him, but his posture still, projecting something like confidence. Diana sat at the plaintiff's table alone. Her team of attorneys had abandoned her the moment she agreed to testify against Rossi. Daniel and I sat together at our table. Just the two of us. The truth and whatever came with it. Diana's remaining counsel, a desperate man named Richard Vale, called me to the stand first. Mr. Calloway, isn't it true that 10 years ago you were unfaithful to your wife? The room went absolutely still. Caleb was in the gallery with Renee. I could feel his eyes on me without looking. Yes, I said clearly. I made a terrible mistake one night during a business trip. I have regretted it every day since. And you never told your wife. No, I was ashamed, and I was wrong. Vale smiled the smile of a man who thought he had found a wound. So while you sit here claiming to be the victim, you are in fact a hypocrite who violated his own marriage vows. Daniel rose. Your Honor, Mr. Calloway made one mistake a decade ago, which he is acknowledging. Openly. Mrs. Mitchell Calloway conducted affairs with 7 different men across 8 years, used her children as alibis, stole $40,000 from the marital account, and conspired to commit federal espionage. The comparison is not only offensive, it is absurd. Judge Farrow turned to me. Mr. Calloway, did that single indiscretion become a pattern? No, Your Honor. Did you use your son to conceal it? Never. Did you commit fraud, theft, or conspiracy? No, ma'am. She nodded once. Mr. Vale, if you're suggesting that one mistake made a decade ago renders a man unfit as a parent, while asking this court to overlook a decade-long pattern of deception and criminal activity, you are wasting my time. Vale sat down. Then Diana took the stand, not to defend herself, to tell the truth. Her voice was steady and quiet and devastated all at once. She confirmed the intelligence operation. She confirmed the blackmail. She confirmed the years of lies. She looked at Caleb in the gallery and said, I was sent to use your father. But you made me want to be something better. I failed at that. I'm sorry. Caleb said nothing. He just looked at her. Then the back doors opened, and Ellie walked in with Patricia Lawson. Her voice, when she took the stand, did not waver. I am Diana Calloway's biological daughter. She gave me up 14 years ago and never looked back. But she used my name, used the idea of me, as an excuse to cover her affairs. She told people she was visiting her sick daughter in Delaware when she was meeting other men. She made me part of her lies before I even knew she existed. The courtroom was silent in a way courtrooms rarely are. Then from the gallery, a sound I will remember for the rest of my life. Caleb's voice, 9 years old and trembling with everything he'd been holding in for weeks. I want to live with my dad. People turned. The bailiff started to move. Judge Farrow held up her hand. Mom's boyfriend is weird, and Mom's always gone, and I miss my dad. Why can't I just live with my dad? And then his voice broke into something raw and real. You lied to me, Mom. You said Dad hit those guys for no reason. But I heard you on the phone. You told him to scare him. You're the liar. Farrow let him finish. Then she called a recess. In the hallway, Daniel gripped my arm. Ryan, this could go either way. But something shifted in there. He was right. When Farrow returned, she was direct. This court grants full physical and legal custody of Caleb Calloway to Marcus Calloway, effective immediately. Mrs. Calloway will be permitted supervised visitation upon her release from federal custody, contingent upon completion of psychological evaluation and parenting courses. I held my son in that courtroom, and I wept. I'm not embarrassed by that. I held him, and I wept away. You weep when something you were terrified of losing comes back to you, and you finally believe. It's real. One chapter was over. But the last one, the one where I tell you what all of it taught me, that's the part I've been saving. We're almost at the end, and I want to ask you something before we get there. If you've been watching this whole story unfold, if any of it has lived inside something you've felt, I want to know about it. Keep watching. We're almost home. 2 months after the custody hearing, Vincent Rossi was sentenced to 19 years in federal prison. Diana received 11 years, with possibility of parole after 7, conditional on full cooperation with the federal investigation, which she gave. The immigration proceedings against me were dismissed entirely. My citizenship, earned honestly 24 years ago, was secure. Judge Greer was arraigned on corruption charges. His career, his reputation, and apparently his golf handicap were someone else's problem now. Daniel's family moved into a new home with a proper security system. He and Grace seemed, somehow, closer than they'd been before. Tested things have a way of becoming stronger things. I accepted a position as head of electrical engineering at a firm across the city. A fresh start. Honest. Work, the same as always, just without the shadow of a corrupt board member hanging over me. And our family, the strange, improbable rebuilt thing that had assembled itself from the ruins, settled into something that looked slowly and imperfectly like home. Ellie came every other weekend. She and Caleb had that particular sibling chemistry that seems to exist independently of circumstance, the kind where they argued constantly about video games and then defended each other fiercely against anyone else. She was 14 and sharp and funny and occasionally infuriating, and she was ours. One evening, I was in the kitchen making dinner. The smell of something edible, finally, after months of survival cooking. From the living room, I could hear Caleb and Ellie bickering about whose turn it was, their voices rising and falling with the comfortable rhythm of people who feel safe enough to argue. Caleb called out without looking up from the screen, "Dad, are we going to be okay?" I looked at him for a moment, at Ellie next to him, at the house that felt like a house again. "Yeah, buddy, we're going to be better than okay." Ellie glanced back at me. "We're a real family now, right?" "Yeah," I said. "A real one. Built on truth this time." Later, after both kids were asleep, I stood on the back porch in the quiet. The kind of quiet that used to feel empty. Now it just felt like peace. Daniel called, as he did most nights, just to check in. The habit of brothers. "You did it," he said. "We did it," I corrected. "There's no version of this where I get through it alone." "How do you feel?" I thought about that for a while. The question of how I felt after everything. After the betrayal and the fight and the fear and the truth that dismantled 15 years of what I thought my life was. After learning that I had been a target before I was a husband. After holding a 9-year-old boy in a courtroom and crying in front of strangers and not caring at all. Grateful, I said finally. I feel grateful because here's what I know now on the other side of all of it. Betrayal will find you if it's looking. You cannot prevent it. You cannot always see it coming. You cannot protect yourself against the kind of long, patient lie that builds itself into the architecture of your daily life. There is no foolproofing against that kind of thing. But what I also know is this. Truth is stubborn. It keeps surfacing no matter how many layers of deception are pressed down on top of it. It finds cracks. It finds 14-year-old girls who deserve to know who they are. It finds 9-year-old boys who have simply had enough of being lied to. It finds agents with warrants and friends with the courage to stay on a case when staying is dangerous. Truth is patient in its own way, and it wins more often than people who tell lies would like to believe. Tell me in the comments, what part of this story hit you the hardest? What would you have done differently? And if you've dealt with something similar, a betrayal that went deeper than you expected, a fight you almost gave up on, share your story. You are not alone, not even close. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life, because there are more people fighting these battles in silence than any of us realize, and sometimes the only thing a person needs is to hear that someone else made it through. I made it through, and I am still here. My name is Marcus Calloway. I am 42 years old. I have 2 kids who argue about video games and call me dad. I have a brother who stayed when it cost him something. I have a house that feels like mine again. And for the first time in 15 years, every single part of that is true.